Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of B2B Live Collab, where I speak with entrepreneurs, conscious entrepreneurs, and leaders who are not only consciously leading in their industry, but also who can share insights, wisdom, and their experience on what it means to collaborate with the level of expertise. How have they thrived in this way? So, thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you happen to like this episode, don't forget to follow both MJ and I and share this with a friend. Please help me welcome my guest, MJ Gordon. Hi, MJ. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you see I have weird facial expressions down here, we are also live on Instagram. So that's what's going on there. But I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Delisa.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for being my guest. You and I have been following each other on Instagram for a while now, which is really good, and commenting on each other's profile. And so this is how we got connected. And then, of course, I love what you're doing. I love your work and how you are being of service to humanity. So before we get into all the key points that can best serve others, please share with us who you are, who you serve, and how are you positively influencing and impacting lives.
I appreciate that, Delisa, and I appreciate you. I'm so happy to be connected. I am MJ Gordon. I'm a high performance coach. I love helping entrepreneurs or new business owners get to that next level of high performance in their lives. And this was super important because I see this huge need of people who are trying to impact the world and make big things happen for themselves and others. And oftentimes these folks are stuck, not knowing how to get to their next level or spread too thin, which is really easy to do as an entrepreneur business owner, right? So, in my own personal experience and need to get myself to the next level, this program and this whole space that I've created here online kind of just naturally occurred. And as you know, Delisa, when it comes to connecting with folks that really care to add value, it's just kind of hard to stop wanting to connect with that.
100%. We got to keep that connection going. And, the way of the future is connection because with all the AI and robotics, which are helpful and they serve their purpose, we do need that human connection, that psychological support. And when you're talking about high performance, right away, I know many people are thinking that go, go, go mentality. They're thinking they have to be on 24 hours a day. And they have to be overwhelmed, overworked, no boundaries, and burdened with the stress of what that means. And sadly, we see a lot of high profile entrepreneurs, usually in the masculine, exhibiting that. But that's because they have other people taking care of the rest of themselves. But you're doing things a bit different. You could say, yes, we're high performance, but we still need
We
to be
got a little bit.
optimized in our energy. So share with me, please. How do we do that? How do we become high performance and still have and maintain energy optimization?
Yeah, great question. And I do want to note that, for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, we're kind of wired to want to go, 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 right? Like some of it is self imposed, but another of it is we're just so excited to create and to do all these things. And so, one of the really key pieces that we're working with lately, meaning in our culture and the way society is structured today, is that we are overstimulated and overcommitted constantly. So, we've gone from very quickly in the last 10, 20 years saying, what do I want to do with my life? To now having to look at life as, what do I need to say no to? We have all the options available at our fingertips. And so being overcommitted, it's just so easy, right? Like things are exciting. It sounds so good. I can do that, not a big problem. But then we grow like these little monsters that require time, money, attention, and energy. And we start to spread really thin. And because of that, we can't really create an optimal focus where we can actually reach from this stage to the next. And we find ourselves kind of spinning our wheels in the mud because of how spread thin we are. So a lot of people often ask, well, I don't want to let go of all the things, right? Like everything's important. My family is important. My health is important. And my business is very important. So how do we continue to maintain this higher level of balance? Well, we have to take it back down to basics, like actual biology. And this is something that, interestingly enough, as entrepreneurs, we don't take the time to test or strategize. We're often strategizing and testing our market strategy, our lead generation, etc. But how often are you stopping and saying, what system am I actually working with here? My brain and body. And what makes my system unique? Where are my weaknesses? Where are my strengths? How can I leverage those strengths? And how can I, sort of counterbalance that weakness? So that's one of the first things that we do with our entrepreneurs is really talk about testing the system and going at this from a scientific level so we know what pieces we actually are working with.
Yeah. I want to stay on energy optimization for a little bit, although I love what you're saying. If anyone who's tuned in, if you have a question, please ask. MJ is here to share her wisdom, her insights, and if there's something that you want to be able to work with her or follow along to get more information from her, this is the time, this is the hour to do it, especially as we're coming into this season of sugar. It's like the sugar season. And then we're also in a season of high stress, high demand, because a lot of businesses are coming down or closing, not really closing down. You're never like closing down, but is briefly pausing for the holiday season. And then at the same time, we're still trying to figure out, well, I need to be high performance for January. So there are people who are locked in automatically thinking, I got to do this, whoever, XYZ challenge to be able to set my timings right, as well as all these other things. So you talked about the basics and the foundation. Why is it important for us to get back to the basics, build the foundation or lay the foundation and put up strong structures?
Yeah, great question. I mean, if you think about anything that requires energy, your car, your cell phone, if you're constantly just plugging in temporarily or you're not checking your engine light or changing the oil, the performance will go down. And so a lot of entrepreneurs find that when they first started business or maybe when they were in their early 20s, everything was going and it was really easy to just hustle and grind. And then at some point, oftentimes what they find is they're hitting this wall and they're not meeting their performance levels like they did before. They're not as motivated as they used to be. They're starting to find other issues that never used to exist. And this is from going for such a long time, overtaxing the system and creating a deficit. And a lot of people don't realize that on a chemical level, like what happens when you first start to hustle is you're asking your adrenals to push out more cortisol. So you're creating this hormone that is actually meeting the demands of your fight or flight. It's meeting that stress threshold that you're imposing on the system. It can only do so for so long. So after a while, you go from an overproduction of cortisol to the opposite, an underproduction. So it's kind of like the progression of what that overwhelm and that imbalance comes from. It's like at first you're able to meet these demands and then suddenly the system can't handle it anymore. So that's why it's super important to keep that good foundation from the start.
And cortisol is a hot topic. I remember about 10 years ago, they would have all these supplements, not really supplements, things, pills and stuff like that, talking about cortisol. And they would say, take this so you can beat the cortisol at night. But then it wasn't addressing the main issue with the whole metabolic rate, with the whole fight or flight system. What it was is suppressing maybe the increase in cortisol or all of that, where now the body, especially around the stomach area, the belly area, is producing that additional cortisol and holding on to the fat, which all that affects all of the other things you talked about, the mind and the body, and then your output, you're not high performing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, because it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah. It creates all kinds of loose ends and other problems, like other stuff that you just don't want to have to deal with.
When it comes to our functional health, and I know this is like a new term that some people they just like add it. And this is true. Like honestly, a dentist now they have like holistic dentists, regular dentists,
Mhm.
and then they have functional dentists. I don't know if you've even heard of this, but this
I've
is
not heard of a functional
a
dentist.
functional. But what the functional dentist does is look at the microbiome in your mouth
Mm,
to
mhm.
help so anything that you're eating and you're ingesting. Of course we have the gut microbiome and the brain microbiome. They're starting from the mouth, right? And does it have the nutrients and all of that stuff that it needs? But anyways, when it comes to our health, what type of insights can you share that can help busy entrepreneurs, busy women in particular?
Mhm.
Not that men don't get nervous. It's just that with women, we carry so much more um, with us. We're
Yeah.
thinking family. We're thinking our spouse. We're thinking our business. We're thinking our team. We're thinking about ourselves too. There are all of these multiple facets, and now more than ever, we need things to be, I guess, automated and like quick, but at the same time functional that can help us in our daily lives. So, what kind of health, functional health insights or tips that you can share with us that can help us?
It's great. That's super great. In terms of functionality and the way that your brain and body work, the
Mhm,
first step is to understand, right? And it's actually really simple. You can Google a lot of this stuff and understand how brain waves work, how that affects your stress levels, and how the mind works in the reward cycle. Like the dopamine cycle is like a huge thing, right? So I'll
mhm,
tackle like three things that we can talk about right now that you guys can all do today. The first is to rev up and wind down your day. So many of us go through our day and we just jump out of bed and we listen to these millionaire morning routines like jump out of bed, cold plunge, like do a hard workout. Like that's really great. Like when you're a millionaire and you have 3 hours, you have 3 hours to do, focus on this, take your time, recover. But for most of us, really the key factor is if you're in a deficit, you don't need to be asking your adrenal system to take on more stress. So to really understand where you are in your stress threshold and how much is too much, where that line is of too much and how much recovery does that take. So you can quantify these things and you can say, I know that if I do this kind of hit training routine, I'm going to need this type of recovery and that's going to occupy X amount of time throughout my day. You do this by first learning to rev up in the morning, start with slower brainwave activities, and then slowly move up into that thinking active state. And the reason this is because when you jump out of bed and you do that cold plunge and then you're just go, 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 your brain's already on fire. So, what more when more stress has come on, the to dos stack on, pressure happens, you got other fires to put out. Now you're like overheating, so to speak. This is a terminology that we use. So I always tell my clients, cool your jets, cool your jets. When you get out of bed, don't pick up your phone first thing.
mhm,
Just take some time, feel your breath, feel that body in the bed, feel that relaxation that you're just exiting out of and entering into. You don't need to just like go on, be on right away. You're going to be amazed at how much of a difference this is going to make. And then paired with that, having that wind down period, usually 3 hours before bedtime, it doesn't mean don't be productive. It means strategize your day. So, what activities do you already do in the morning? Do you check your emails? Do you get coffee? Do you take your dog out for a walk? Just by implementing some really easy things that you can do within 30 to 60 seconds, like taking that deep breath before you get out of bed, coming off the edge of your bed and just sitting there for a minute, maybe thinking for an intention through the day. Like how do I want to go through today? Or what's my main goal today? And then maybe instead of checking your emails and getting your coffee first, maybe you take your dog out for that walk first, right? Or maybe you get the coffee first and you just sit for a minute. Then you take the dog out for the walk and add the emails last. We kind of do it backwards, right? Like we're in bed and already looking at the emails and scrolling. So same with the evening, you want to wind down. So you put all of the kind of heavy load stuff at the front end right before dinner. And for me, I like to say after dinner time, that's when we start to wind down. Like I might be able to send an email or two or just do a couple key things that are easy. But then after that, I'm really focused on getting that evening routine because it's going to prime you for sleep. And so it is a cycle that feeds itself. The best way that the most optimal that you can prime yourself for sleep, the better sleep you're going to get. The better sleep you're going to get, the easier it is going to wake up and have that space to rev up in the morning. And then when you're able to rev up, then you're going to be more optimized throughout the day, so on and so forth. So that's number one. Number two is really understanding where your limits are and creating buffers around those limits. So we have a tendency where we're like, I have this many hours in a day. Oh, I got this meeting, this meeting, this meeting. Let me just shove everything else in between. And when people are like, hey, can you do this? When are you available for that? We're like, oh, I've got like this 20 minutes of time. Let me just shove it in there. But we're not accounting for, again, what kind of stress threshold we have and what kind of buffer space do we need after that? Like, if you know that this meeting you're going into is going to be more stressful than other meetings, let's just say it's a meeting with, X client that is kind of a tough client to deal with, then you might add that 20 minutes afterwards to just reset and recover. But we're not doing that. We're going from one stress to the next to the next. And when you look at how our stress management cycles work in the body, we're actually meant to face like extreme stress for short term. Like they say about 15 minutes of high levels of stress. What we're doing nowadays is the way that our brains are actively working, because we're solving problems, we're creatively thinking, we're dealing with things coming at us at a fast pace. We're constantly in a moderate to low level of chronic stress. And we can't exit out. You can actually impose and create like a permanent fight or flight state.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. And it's not because you're a stressful person. It's simply because the activities that you do activate this stress cycle in the mind and the body. So the third thing that you can do is just make sure that you understand what your key elements are. What are the priorities that you're trying to fulfill? A lot of times we stack all of our schedule and to-dos without really considering what key elements for our lives that we're trying to fulfill for ourselves and our goals. And we're just kind of going through the motions. So what I mean by this is like, we're like, okay, I want to have a best-selling book next year, and I want to launch this new business idea, and I want to do all these collaborations. But why are we doing these things? What purpose are they fulfilling? And then can we rank them and categorize them of how necessary it really is? Like, sure, this new marketing strategy is a great idea, or being involved in this family event because you feel like, you should contribute something to the community, like all these things. But like, rank them on a list based on what your personal key elements are. And then start to eliminate the ones that don't really top that list. We just say yes to so much. And so we're overcommitted and overextended.
Well, thank you for going through all three steps. Before I continue on, I want to say to everyone that's tuning in, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to follow MJ at MJ Gordon. She's on LinkedIn, Instagram. And if you have a question while we're here and we're talking about high performance, we're talking about energy optimization, we're talking about helpful ways, solution-based insights, like not only insights, but solutions that are proven, factual. She's not even making this stuff up. She's even proven it with her clients. Then ask that question. This is your opportunity. MJ, you shared a lot, and you mentioned this word since we started, strategy. You need to strategize your life. You need to strategize a way to become high performance within yourself, within your health and your wellness. When people think strategy, right away, they think business. And half of the time, well, I'll say 85% of the time, and I don't even think I'm making this number up. It's like pretty accurate, this number. 85% of the time, people have zero clue on what that word means and or understanding of how to come up with a strategy. So you talked about, the three steps: waking up in the morning, revving up your day, then winding it down. You mentioned as well the second part of putting orders, intentionality and order into your day. Yes, people, it's called discipline and structure. I know.
Yeah.
We don't like to use that word in 2024, but it is an old word that is coming back and that is needed. And then the third piece, if I remember correctly, you talked about setting boundaries and the value of these three main pieces. How can we strategize? How can we put in a strategy to implement all three things. And you mentioned, um, if you're millionaires, or you have a certain amount of hours in the day, to do the cold plunge, to do the meditation, to do this, to do that, and it does take a long time. It's a fact, right? It does take time to do all of those things. Um, are you saying to me not to do that, or do I need to be more strategic in my approach if I'm going to implement that? And if so, how do I do that?
Yeah. Wow, really good questions, Delisa. I want you to be more strategic in your approach. Most of us that are trying to build business, if we're feeling stuck, like we can't get to that next level, cold plunges and the millionaire morning routine is not something that should be a focus priority right now, unless you've been able to test your system and you see there is a clear ROI to doing so. For example, if you're doing a cold plunge and your test results are coming back and saying that your immunity is up, your testosterone is up, all these things, you're getting better sleep at night, etc., then maybe a quick 2 or 3 minute cold plunge is good for you in the morning. But the thing is, we tend to hear all of these really good ideas. We come online and we listen to our podcasts, read our books, and we think all these ideas sound good. How am I going to implement these all? It's not about that. It's about asking yourself if you are the right avatar for this information at this very point in your situation right now. It could be a good idea for you now and not later, or vice versa, later and not now. So to answer your question, which was how do you strategize a little bit more, create that strategy for yourself? You have to remember, or at least this is my philosophy or what I tell my clients, like you got to remember that what you want is separate to what you feel. And a lot of entrepreneurs are going to say, well, I know that, right? I do what I don't feel a lot every single day. I'm putting myself off. But we got to go further than that, because what's deeper is what result is it that you are after? Any result, regardless if it's on a game board or, in math, or we're talking about business strategy or life strategy, right? There are key actions that are required to get there. And depending on where you start and what system it is you're working with, those actions can look different for me than it is for you. So we talked about getting clear on those key elements. The next step would be, what does it take to get there? Do you want to be a successful mom, business owner, entrepreneur, still travel the world, have the time to do your cold plunges in the morning? Okay, throw it down on the board and let's strategize, move the pieces around, see what it is that we need to actually get you to that outcome. Too often we are, trying to just feel our way through, and we're taking life as it comes. So when we talk about strategy, what we're really doing is we're identifying a key goal or outcome, and then we're taking all the pieces, auditing that, and then deciding how to move those pieces in what order to get to that outcome or goal. And that's something that we often don't do about life. One of the things that we really like to do with clients in my Level Up program is make sure that we are strategizing or auditing, right? Using all the pieces from all the areas of life, because we tend to separate very big, important areas into their own categories. It's like, I'm going to do all my work in my business over here. Then I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to go home and then deal with my family, right? And then I'm going to turn that off and then I'm going to wake up and do my fitness routine in the morning. And then I'm going to turn that off and go be with my friends and do something over here. And that's just not how it works. When you do that, you create multiple separate areas that require you to maintenance all across the board. But what if we can do multiple things at once? What if you can, for a frame of reference, there's that phrase, kill two birds with one stone. I don't like it. I always say hit five targets with one arrow. Right? If we can strategize and figure out a way to meet your needs that support your goals, and we do that in less moves, one action, multiple outcomes, then now we're strategizing. We're not just taking things as they come or trying to check off our, massive growing to-do list.
Yeah, that's a good way to, in terms of balancing and strategizing your life. And many people put things in compartments in their mind, right? They have to compartmentalize it. So then it's like, okay, now I've switched to this. And so they focus on that. And there's nothing wrong with it. But we live in such a time now that we have to know how to kind of flow
Yeah.
with what is happening. And to be able to be in a flow requires you to be strategic, intentionally strategic in every part of your day. You have to be strategic in your business. You have to be strategic with your family. You have to be strategic with your partner or your spouse. And you have to be strategic with yourself, most importantly, because it starts with you. And that's where that balance piece comes in. Before we move on, I want to touch on entrepreneurs and let's look at them specifically, especially when it comes to teams and high performance. We all have, well, most people they're on here either have a business, wanting to start a business, or like an executive, they've been in industry for a while. They're also wanting to extract from their team high performance.
Mhm.
High performance, high ROIs equals a profit, whatever the profit is based, like it can be whatever it is that the outcome that you want. How can a leader, either the business owner or the team lead, extract from their team high performance strategically?
So I will caveat, I'm not an expert in team building, but I will say for me, I love my team. And I feel like my team are a team of top high performers and they stay with us for a very long time. And I think it first comes down to, and then this is just our approach. We look for people whose goals align with ours. We always start with outcome based, right? So just like we talk about strategizing your life outcome and your business outcome, we need to know what is that goal that we're looking for and does this person fit? So that's number one, because if somebody's goals don't align, it's really hard to motivate somebody to do something just for the money. We know this as entrepreneurs. This is why we're here doing what we love, right? A lot of us have moved out of businesses and jobs that actually paid us really well. And we're here because it's aligned with our goals and values. So, number one, identify those people. Number two, communicate exactly what the goals are, what the strategy is. And you're strategizing one-on-one with these people, especially if they're team leaders or managers. We want to strategize and keep those goals aligned. And we're talking in a collaborative way now. How can we help you reach your goals in a way that helps me reach my goals? And how can we do this together? We are actually a team. I'm not just your boss, right? And then number two, it's all about making sure that team stays balanced. So a lot of times we get people on board because it's aligned with their goals and they're really excited about it. They want to just work, 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 work. And sometimes we have to issue, hey, nobody's allowed to work today. This is, team day off. Why are you texting me? Why are you on ClickUp? We're not here today. So we very much communicate very thoroughly about what it takes for you to get in balance. We as leaders try to be attentive to those people's needs, not just through their performance aspect, but as people. So, I had a meeting with one of my team leaders just this week because I just had a feeling something was off. She was just less responsive. She was getting her stuff done. Everything was looking great. And when I got on the phone with her, I mean, then, obviously it was obvious, like you can feel the energy, like what's going on. And for them to feel that you as a leader care beyond their performance and the dollars, they really become loyal and want to invest. They know they're in a system that doesn't just care about the numbers, but the numbers are important because our goals are aligned. But they care about me as a culture and that company culture, me as a person, and that company culture is so important to create and maintain. For me, that's more important than anything. And sometimes if the performance goes down, then we may have to part ways because it's not just about this singular person or my personal goals. It's about the team as a whole. If one person isn't picking up their weight, I mean, we have to have a conversation about how we can support that weight to be met. Otherwise, this is no longer a right fit. And so for us, it's not an emotional decision as much as it is like what is the best for the health of the team and the outcome that we're trying to pursue together.
I appreciate your honesty in that, and your example of how you approach this with your team. And I agree with you. It does come down to the people that you're also working with, these people that you're hiring, it, whether it be contractors or staff, full-time staff members. And the reason why you need to have that alignment, the values alignment,
Mm.
the goal alignment, et cetera, et cetera. These things are important because you are a team and you're working towards a singular goal, whatever that goal will be. And there will be times where you're going to say, I don't like this. There will be times you're going to say, this does not work. Like, why are we still 2 months ago when we need to be 3 months ahead? Right? In its own way. So thank you so much for sharing that. Um, to stay a lot more on strategy, most people, women in particular, we see strategy as more of a masculine asset
Mhm.
and empathy as more of a feminine way of leadership. Because, of course, men lead very, very different from women. And if you look online, like you're in the health and wellness field, and you look at how a man will approach it, very, very different, or sorry, high performance, right? It's slightly different, right? The approach is different, obviously, because your values are yours, his is his. How do you balance strategy, empathy together? Because it's one thing to read The Art of War, which I've read many times in several versions, and then implementing it, and a whole other thing to not take things personal, but still be empathetic.
Mm.
And there's a lot of talk now about being that empathetic leader and listening for good communication, but both needs to be balanced. Please share. How can we do that?
I can share with you just my personal approach.
Of course.
And I always view what is logical and what is emotional as separate. And to me, empathy is logical, but our emotions are involved, right? Because
Mhm.
we're having an emotional experience when we're experiencing or expressing that empathy. It's not like, your cat passed away, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, to empathize is to really feel to feel what it might feel like for you to go through that hardship. So we are human beings, we're not robots. So, of course, emotions come into play. The reason that I say they're separate is because it doesn't really matter how you feel or what emotional experience you're having. The goals or the outcome you want are separate from that. But empathy and emotion do come into play because we're humans. So, your question, how do you balance that? I always say understanding how you process your emotions and what it is you need to think and feel is going to be something that you need to process and manage. So, just like I could be an amazing athlete, and if I brush my teeth one time a day, two times, three times a day, it doesn't matter. Like, I can still be an amazing athlete. However, if I don't brush my teeth at all and I start getting a toothache, that could start to affect my performance as an athlete, right? So emotions are kind of the same way. It's just like, that's just kind of a silly, example, but emotions are the same way. It's like you can shove it under the rug and just keep focusing on getting the results. But if you don't process it, at some point, this is going to abscess and turn into an infection that is going to affect your performance and all those things. So balancing it comes down to, again, it's a strategy. I mean, like, I don't think strategy or empathy are separate in terms of you have to strategize where you're going to process, how you're going to feel. So for me, it's like I literally wrote in my journal before I got on here today. I was like, it's been 9 days since I've journaled. That's not good. I usually journal every day, every other day, but it has been a busy week and I can feel it. For me, that is how I process my emotions. I need to set aside 10 to 20 minutes a day to process my thoughts on paper or, via typing. For some people, like my daughter, it's art. My husband, it's exercise. And my other daughter, it's just going and sitting alone and quiet. So to understand what it is you need, and some people might say, well, how do I understand that, MJ? You just got to try things out and be okay with, oh, this didn't work. I took an hour, took a long walk, and now I'm more cranky than I've ever been. don't do that next time, try something different. Maybe you need to talk to a friend. So your emotions, your empathy, it needs to be able to live. It has to have presence and space in your experience. And it's not just a side thing. It's not just something that happens on top of stuff. You actually have to make space for it and intentionally be there with your emotions, with your empathy.
Yes, it's that's a really nice explanation of finding the balance of strategy and empathy together, and recognizing when, well, I shouldn't say when, really mastering your emotions at the
Yeah.
same time, because there's a time and a place for everything. In the midst of a storm, in the midst of outing out different fires that might be happening, that's not the time to curl up and sit there and like go in a ball. Um, you need the strength, especially if you're leading, especially if you are in charge of that, to stand up and rise up and get up and say, "Let's go!" Like, this is the path that we're going to go, or pause for a second, take a breath, figure out what's next, and then lead forward. Afterwards, if you need to have a good cry, then yeah, have that good cry. So um
I like
yeah.
that you mentioned that sometimes it is not the time to process, right? And I think we get confused as leaders. We think, oh, I shouldn't be emotional, or I shouldn't fill in the blank. There isn't a shouldn't if that is what's happening, right? Like, you are emotional, or you're having, Tom Bilyeu likes to say, you're
Yeah.
having a biological experience. The question is just like, this is why I like using that word strategies. Like, what pieces can we move about to move through this as efficiently as possible, and to get back on track with the outcome that we desire. So maybe I have a bad client. And I remember it was actually such a gift when there was one week I was so busy doing stuff that I was like on fire about. And we had this major problem client come in with one of my other companies, and my team is freaking out. And I could tell they were having a hard time, emotionally dealing with this. And I said, you know what? I got this. And my husband, who's team lead for that company, is like, wait, you're so busy. Like, it's okay. We'll handle it. Don't worry. And I was like, actually, because I'm so busy, I don't have the time to care other than to just fix it as fast as humanly possible. And I'm not feeling emotional about it. I'm pretty detached. So I think I can talk to this person in a way that is really empathetic and understanding, while still holding our boundaries and giving the best possible options that we've got. And if they can't take that, then that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
this is all we can do, is give our best. So it's interesting because it's not about what you should or shouldn't be feeling. It's just about, like, in this moment, do you have the time to process? And if not, make sure you get that time to process for yourself.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you so much for tuning in every week. You've consistently tuned in. You always put a comment, and Lucille always tunes in from YouTube. To everyone who's tuning in from YouTube, thank you so much. From X, LinkedIn, Facebook, thank you. Don't forget to ask your questions to MJ. She's here to answer. And follow MJ along on all the platforms, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Where else are you at? X,
On YouTube.
YouTube, and
Yeah.
it's all at MJ Gordon. So follow her along and ask questions, learn from her. MJ, before we wrap up, we really spent time talking about, I'm going to use the word mastering our emotions, and finding that balance between strategy and empathy in terms of our leadership, in terms of our leadership and how we run and lead our business, our empire. What are some tools, perhaps 3 to 5 tools that people can utilize to manage stress and prevent burnout as a high performer?
Mhm. First, for most of you high performers out there, there is nothing wrong with you. And if there is something that feels wrong with your experience, we like to label this as a system error. So just like a computer may malfunction, if there's something slightly off with the programming or code, it just means you're missing a gap that needs to be filled in, because most of us are actually pretty logical, right? We're business owners. We know what it takes to plan and make moves. So just having that to fall back on and say, okay, it's not something I need to necessarily fix about me, my character, or like my mindset. Understand that when your body isn't happy or your brain isn't balanced, it's going to tell you it's unhappy. So you're going to feel unhappy, and you're going to feel like the experience you have is subpar. It's not optimal. Another thing you can do is watch your dopamine intake. We call these low friction, high reward activities. Some examples of those are playing video games, scrolling TikTok, like the fast, moving, like very entertaining social media content. For some of you guys, it's creating content, or like, planning business and blah, 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 about all the things, with your team and whatnot. For me, it's actually fictional novels. Believe it or not, I get so sucked into my books that even if I'm like, I'm just going to read this for 15 minutes, I cannot think clearly when I'm working because I just want to go back to knowing what happens next in my book. Other things that, are a little bit more taboo to talk about, things like pornography, those kind of things, low friction, very high reward, high sugar foods, anything that is very easy for you to access and feel a lot of pleasure or satisfaction from. Those are low friction, high reward activities, and they're different for every person. So if you're experiencing a day where your mind is dragging and you're like, man, I was looking forward to my to-do list and I'm not getting to it today, it's likely, if you look back and see what activities you did yesterday, maybe yesterday you went out to lunch, had some wine, and then took the rest of the day off, right? Going shopping. Those kind of things can affect the way that your brain moves. It like slows it down, and there's really nothing you can do about it other than reset and try to strategize. There's that word again, but try to be thoughtful and intentional about where those activities take place in your day or your week. I like to use those activities as high reward activities. So I compromise with myself. If I want to do this, I will allow myself to, at the end of the day or the end of the week, if I get X, Y, and Z done. And this creates, for people like me who have ADHD, so if you're anywhere on the spectrum, which is most entrepreneurs, there is a difference in filtering and in the reward cycle. ADHD folks have a hard time not being impulsive. And a lot of us are ADHD. And actually, science has shown that there is non-genetic ADHD that is starting to occur in adults, just basically simply because of all the low friction, high reward stuff we get on our phones online. So it's becoming a growing problem. But if you maintain awareness of that and intentionally place it in areas where you're putting a big amount of effort, even if it's completely irrelevant. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, if I, accomplish all 10 of these projects today and do my house chores, then I'll let myself have an hour of playing video games with my daughter afterwards on a Friday night, right? So like you can move these pieces around to help with those. And then also understanding what time limits are. For me, I can read my fictional novels, but I can have to limit it to about 2 to 3 hours on the weekend. And I won't do it on a Sunday night because then Monday morning, I'm still thinking about my book. This stuff matters, right? And making sure that your sleep hygiene is on point. So not to shift gears, but there's some of the really easy, I'm a big fan about least amount of effort, highest ROI. And one of the things that you can do right now is just simply Google sleep hygiene and see what 2 or few things you can change or adjust in your room or the way that you sleep. Maybe you need to turn your air conditioning down just by a couple degrees. Maybe you need to change the blanket that you're using, but try to play with just a couple things that you can tweak that will help you develop a deeper and more quality sleep cycle. If you have something like an Apple Watch, Whoop Band, or an Oura Ring, this is a great way to measure whether or not those effects are really helping or taking place. Small things like magnesium. So far right now, that is like the supplement that everybody's talking about. Helps you relax, helps with bowel movements, helps you sleep better. I noticed a huge difference when I remove magnesium from my supplementation. There's so many other things. Obviously, taking time to laugh. As an entrepreneur, when you feel busy, you're not taking time to enjoy. And it's actually really important for you chemically, biologically, to have space to enjoy and do stuff simply for the goal of just enjoying it, right? And I'm not talking about scrolling TikTok, because we do that. We're like, I have a 5-minute break. I'm just going to get a snack and just check out a couple reels. Don't do that, because it's not helping you support the outcome that you desire. If it did, then I would say do that, right? So it has nothing to do with labeling any kind of particular action or habit as good or bad. It's about really understanding what supports your income or your system for the outcome you desire. That's the whole goal, right? So obviously we have to account for all the other things that are important, like our emotions and our children and all those other things. So take the time to outline, process what kind of timeline those take. I mean, how many of you guys take the time to say, okay, this is how much focus time, quality time, face-to-face time I spend with my children on a daily, weekly basis, in addition to how much time it takes me to get ready and prepare for my day, in addition to how much travel time I spend in the day. We don't do that. And here's a cool thing. We talk about AI in the beginning, and that connection is still important. Utilize Chat GPT. I have literally said, let me give you an inventory or an audit of what my week's going to look like and the time estimates that I feel like I have that I need going into this. And this is what's important to me. Within the first hour, I don't check my phone. Within the last 3 hours, I don't do emails or get on my computer screen, blah, blah, blah. And you can just throw this into Chat GPT and it will outline a general weekly schedule for you with all of these business and personal goals, time, tasks, and buffers in between if you want it to. I'm a big fan of utilizing business systems for personal systems. So I can go on forever about that, but there is a software called Motion. If you do try it as AI powered software, you plug in, it syncs with your calendar. You plug in all your to-dos, even if it's something like I want to Windex the windows, and I think that's going to take me 20 minutes, but I want to do that sometime this week. You plug it all in and it will organize it. And then one of the things, quick tip is, like, I was noticing it was organizing things like everywhere. I'm like, I can't like wash the windows, send an email, and then talk to my daughter and then walk the dog. Like, it was kind of crazy, but you can create like time blocks where you're like, in these windows, these are my business activities. In these windows, these are my home activities. And then you just categorize the tasks and it will sort it out for you. A second tip, if you do try that, just do the month to month. Don't pay for the whole year, because I found after a few months of working with it and tweaking it, I found like a sweet spot for my schedule. And then I was able to just keep that schedule as like my normal basic routine. So look at what works well in your businesses that help keep you on track, keep you focused, and keep you moving forward. And think about how to, in a non-traditional way, use some of those things in your own personal life as well. Hopefully that was like 5 tips. I think that was.
Oh no, you gave some really great pointers in terms of the preventing burnout and overwhelm and overstressing the system. One of the things that people don't talk about, but you nailed it right at the beginning, was the high risk, not high risk, pleasure, the high pleasure, low reward.
Friction.
Yeah, low friction. And people don't talk about these things, right? You spending time trying to numb your brain is not helping you. It might feel satisfying, that pleasure aspect. And we live in a time where pleasure is desirable, right? This is pleasing to me, whatever it is, right? Maybe the HIIT workouts or whatever it is that you're doing. But then when we're being strategic and we're intentional and we're being empathetic towards ourselves, let's just start with the self first, then we start recognizing, if I am present consistently in every single moment, awake and or sleeping, I'm intentional about these things, and I'm present in those moments, that's where I'll find that contentment. That's where I'll have the pleasure. And I don't have to seek pleasure outside of what I'm actually doing. I don't have to seek contentment beyond what is. Not saying that there isn't desires to find like better happiness and so on and so forth. But when you're being strategic and empathetic and you're being present in what you're doing, mixed with your intentionality, you will be consistently contented with your life, with where you are. And that actually translate into you becoming more high performance. This is what I got from all the things that you said. Okay, so
I love that.
yes, yes, yes. So thank you so much, MJ, for being here today and for sharing with us all of these incredible ways that we can really take our performance to that next level, take our teams and our families to that next level, and at the same time doing it in a balanced, holistic way. I appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for having me, Delisa.
You're welcome. And to everyone that have tuned in, like consistently, we've been at about 100 and over 120 people online viewing on the various platforms. I don't know how many people are tuned in on Instagram, but thank you all for tuning in for the majority of the conversation. And I hope that you have found value. And I encourage you to reach out to MJ, connect with her, and take your business, your life, your family, all the things that you have to that next level in a holistic and most importantly, healthy way. Have an incredible day, and I will see you all next week.